in case you don't already know, the 3 requirements for being an independent contractor. An employer must prove the following. You have to show 3 things. 1, you have to show that the person is working free of your direction and control. Well, that's an old requirement, right? Anybody that has looked at that issue for the last couple of years knows control was everything. You needed to let the independent contractor come in, do his or her job, and be left alone. The second requirement is the one that really stunned everybody. The person cannot be providing services that are basically the business of the business. So law firms could no longer hire contracting attorneys, because we're in the business of providing legal services. We could hire an independent contractor who performs IT services, because we're not in the business of providing IT services, but we couldn't hire lawyers or paralegals, people that assist us in our business of the business. Same thing with medical practices and any other business. You could not hire a worker who was doing the business of the business. And then the last one is the worker has to be customarily engaged in independent business. This used to be an academic requirement. Under this new test, it is now not just an academic question. The person has to actually be in the business of providing this trade or service that you're hiring them for. They actually have to do it. So it doesn't make any difference if the person has an LLC and a business license that says they do it. They don't do it for somebody else and they're doing it for you. You don't pass this ABC test. Okay. The way the California legislature ended up adopting this test expanded it. So the California Supreme Court decision was limited to questions of whether or not someone was an employee or independent contractor under the wage orders for purposes of enforcing the specific rules that are in the wage orders. The legislature added a new section that says that now it is applicable to any provision of the California Labor Code as well as the Unemployment Insurance Code and now workers' comp. So you basically, if you're hiring anybody to do anything in California, you have to worry about this ABC test for all aspects of their work. The law, like I said, did include exemptions, and a long laundry list of exemptions were included. It was whoever had the strongest lobbying group in Sacramento, other than Uber. Uber probably had the strongest lobbyers in Sacramento, and they were not included in the list of exemptions. But you can see the long list that's on there includes a wide range of occupations and trades. My car yesterday, the battery died, and I had to call AAA to come replace my battery, and I was laughing as the guy got out of his truck. He was exempt. He got a AAA affiliated truck driver. They're not the employees, but I think it's interesting. AAA. So, I mean, aren't there other companies that provide roadside service? I guess they didn't get the exemption. They're all employees of whoever uses them. A lot of industries lobbied but lost. Like I said, the big loser was the ride-sharing companies, Uber and Lyft primarily. Interestingly, truckers did not get an exemption. So if you have a trucking company, you need to be aware of that. I also added, just for fun, that strippers and rabbis and priests, they also got one out. Those that did get included in the exemption have to still meet the Barillo test. So for those of you that don't really know what that requires, the Barillo test was one of the reasons why it was more desirable for both the employer and the contractor, was because it allowed a court to consider a number of different factors in combination, but not a strict 1, 2, 3. So this is the list of factors that courts would look at. If you're in the group of exemptions and you're advocating that you want to be classified as an independent contractor, or if you're an employer and want to make sure that your independent contractor meets this requirement, you don't have to meet all these requirements, you have to meet some. And it has to hit the sweet spot. That was also the downside of the independent contractor test under Barilla, was that there was no way of really knowing whether So I always told my clients that when they were looking at this list of factors, they should be thinking about the classic independent contractor, the company that comes to fix your toilets or does your electricity, wiring, somebody that is completely outside of your business. If they look like that kind of a business, then you're going to be okay. They're going to qualify for the Borello test. But the more they look like an employee of yours, the more they spend time in your workplace, use your computers, your desk, direct your employees, don't work for anybody else, you're going to be on the wrong side of this test. So you still have to meet these requirements, but you can qualify as an independent contractor under the Borello test if you are on the list of exemptions. The other thing you should know about the exemptions is that several of those exemptions have very unique specific requirements or limitations. So for example, there are very specific requirements if you are a marketing consultant or an HR administrator. You have to meet a number of other requirements that are specified in the law. So if you are on one of those, in one of those categories of exemptions, you should double check to make sure that there are not specific requirements that attach to your particular exemption. So if you currently have an independent contractor who you are uncertain meets the requirements, my advice is do something about it before January 1st. Even though you may still be liable going backwards, if it's a wage and hour under the wage orders claim, at least you avoid any new claims occurring after January 1st once this law goes into effect. And then July 1st, 2020 is when the ABC test applies for purposes of workers' compensation.